Have you ever started drinking your morning cup of coffee and thought to yourself, wow, this is really good? I know I have. Coffee is one of my favorite beverages, and it's actually the second most popular beverage in the world. The first is water. Even though most people enjoy drinking a good cup of coffee in the morning, a lot of people actually don't know how to drink it properly. Uh, Most people don't realize that coffee actually has tasting notes very similar to the way that wine has tasting notes. And just like wine, there's a procedure to follow to make sure that you're getting the most out of what you're consuming. So when you're looking at drinking a good cup of coffee, the first thing you need to make sure of is that you're brewing it correctly. Sounds silly, but actually a lot of people aren't preparing their coffee correctly. So the first thing you want to consider is freshness. How long has it been since this coffee has been roasted? Because after a week, the coffee starts to lose its maximum potency, and it's not going to be nearly as good. The next thing to consider is the type of water you're using. You want to make sure that you're always using filtered water because coffee at the end of the day is going to be 98% water, and you want to make sure that you're drinking pure water then. Next thing to consider is going to be the grind. You have to make sure that the beans are ground for the kind of filter system that you are using. Otherwise, you're going to get a coffee that's too weak or too strong. And then the final thing to consider is proportion. It's actually a lot more than people think. You should be using 1 tablespoon of coffee for every 3 ounces of water that you're using. So once we've made sure that our coffee's been brewed correctly and we are confident that we have all of that down, there are some steps we can take to make sure that we're drinking it properly. So once you pour out that cup of coffee, you want to start by actually smelling it. Coffee has a very distinct aroma. A lot of people really enjoy it, but it also has a lot of subtle um, flavor notes that are going to be in there that your nose is going to be able to detect more readily than your tongue might be able to. And so you always want to start drinking each cup of coffee by smelling it. This is also going to give it some time to cool down, which can definitely be a benefit, as coffee is correctly brewed at 210 degrees, which is 4 degrees below boiling point. So once you've started smelling your cup of coffee, the next step that you're going to want to do is slurp it. And you're actually going to want to make a very loud slurping noise as you're doing it, just to make sure that the coffee is being evenly spread around your mouth. This serves two benefits. One, you're going to avoid burning yourself. And two, you want to make sure that the coffee is hitting all parts of your tongue evenly, because different parts of your tongue actually have different taste buds. And so if you're missing a certain part of your mouth, you might actually be missing a certain flavor profile for the coffee. The next thing that you're going to want to do then is locate where in your mouth the coffee is hitting. So it's kind of a natural next step after that is once you taste the coffee and slurp it across your tongue, what kind of things are you experiencing? Is there maybe acidity in the back that's making the back of your mouth tingle, like when you eat fruit? Is it really thick? Is the coffee thick, kind of like whole milk, or is it thin, like non-fat milk? These are all things that are very, very important to consider when you're trying to experience a good cup of coffee. And then once you've identified all of these different parts, you're going to want to describe the flavor profile that you're experiencing. So, like I said, coffee can actually have a range of flavors. One that's very common, for instance, in Latin American coffees is going to be notes of chocolate. And so you can look for kind of those darker, sweeter flavors, or you can have coffee from Africa that has more berry notes to it. And so you can taste things like tangerine or a higher acidity. And all of these things are going to hit different parts of your tongue and they're going to stand out in different measurements. And so it's very, very important to be able to recognize that. And once you do, you can put this all together and you can figure out the kind of acidity, the kind of body, and the kind of flavor profile that your coffee has. This is going to tell you a lot about the quality of the cup of coffee that you're drinking, which is always important to know because coffee can get very, very expensive. And then it's also going to tell you about the region and a little bit about the history of the coffee too, because some places source their coffees differently and some do it more ethically than others. So, in conclusion, I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation. Next time you take a trip to Starbucks or Dutch Brothers, I hope that you pick up a cup of black coffee and you decide to follow these tasting notes. And I hope you enjoy your beverage just a little bit more.